You know, on my driver's license, it says that I'm required to wear some sort of corrective lenses in order to drive. But the last time since they stole my glasses when I was sleeping on the street, at Grassy Knoll, by the way, for the second time, the last time I was offered a chance to get a pair of glasses that did not require me to sign permission to be telemedicated was in conjunction with what I understood to be an effort to create derivative accounts on homeless people associated with the Brexit. There was a 3 day period here in Dallas where, with only within that 3 day period, you had to acquire a letter from a homeless shelter saying you were homeless. And if you were able to do that, you could get a free pair of glasses on the weekend when Brexit was happening. And I said to myself, no, thank you. I don't know if that would have impacted that Elbeat USMC deal that recently was allowed to finance somebody's political campaign. But it might have, right? Now, I bring this up because I think that what we have here is a swap of spies for cadets. Are you willing to fall on your own sword? I have here something that I wrote. It is the first blog post I put on my blog when I started it in early 2019. It's dated for February 5th of 2019. And I'm going to read it right now. Rules of which road? On September 1st, 2017, new laws in Texas went into effect. At the time, the Texas legislature was shut down in response to Hurricane Harvey. Many of the bills had been approved much earlier than the August 23rd, 2017 onset of Hurricane Harvey. Included in these bills were updates to numerous different licenses for the state of Texas, including licenses for cosmetologist, HVAC repair, and pharmacist. Texas had already updated its driver's license program years before. The Texas Impact Drivers Program went into effect on September 1st, 2015. While there is currently no specific version of the program for previously unlicensed drivers over the age of 25 available online, all new driver's license applicants in Texas are required to obtain a certificate to meet the requirements necessary to obtain a Texas driver's license. According to the current version of the Texas Administrative Code, all drivers over 25 are supposed to take the Adult Impact Drivers Program effective March 15, 2017. However, at this time, one over 25 years old is referred to the Texas Young Drivers Program to obtain the required certificate. A cursory investigation of what it takes to obtain a new driver's license in Texas, however, should compel a more comprehensive investigation into what role acquisition of identification documents, including license to drive a motor vehicle as well as operate in other capacities, has in other aspects of a state's polity and economy. The Texas Teen Drivers Program is for people ages 15 to 17, and another qualification for people's ages 18 to 24, while the Texas Young Drivers Program is for people ages 18 to 24 and also for those above the age of 25. When one views the video itself, the reference points contained within the video are all for drivers who are on the cusp of a life transition. There are 3 segments of the Texas Young Drivers Program which are not as good at the program's purported aims of deterring distracted driving as they are at making new drivers apprehensive and self-doubting. Several times, a victim of texting while driving or a witness to a casualty or fatality due to texting while driving shows what is alleged to be the final message on a screen held up to the camera. At least 3 times in all 3 of the segments, the time noted on the text is 4:20. There is additionally a comment from one of the victim witnesses that discusses how he had only looked at his cell phone for 3 seconds, but that 3 seconds was all that was needed to lead to death due to texting while driving. For a young person in the course of a life transition, 420 may have specific connotations. Some of those connotations are indirectly referenced in the video via association with rites of passage that may be events at which young people or adults would engage in consumption of intoxicants aside from alcohol. But there was no direct acknowledgement of that. There was no discussion but merely a comment on smoking being a form of distracted driving. And there was no discussion on how transporting an illicit substance may be a form of distracted driving. Why then would three distinctly timed text messages for 420 be put into a 1 hour video program ostensibly about dissuading people from texting while driving? A review of the subtitles in both English and Spanish is revealing. There are notable differences on how the spoken text of the program correlates with the placement and timing of the accompanying subtitles. In several places, there is a specific delay of 3 seconds in the area wherein the subtitle is placed in English as compared with Spanish. Most revealing is the translation that comes at the very end of the third segment, when the director of the Texas State Troopers, Colonel Stephen McCraw, is discussing the death of Texas State Troopers who were hit on the shoulders of highways during traffic stops. The English version says there were 19 state troopers, while the Spanish version says there were 19 estatales oficiales. The psychological effect of this programming cannot be overstated. Almost all of the scenarios that are represented include some very important rite of passage for the young person involved: graduations, proms, birthday parties. There are 3 appearances by state troopers, although one is not even in Texas but rather in Missouri, and all of them appear to be white-skinned. There are no representations of Texans who are not either Hispanic with Spanish surnames or white. No African Americans appear at all, although there is a picture that is displayed with an African American. It is a very different experience than one has if visiting an urban Department of Public Safety office. That the whole program opens with a story about the death of a young man with the name Benavidez, and the majority of the testimonial about his death comes specifically from his father, is important with regards to Texas history. In the story presented in the video, the young man himself was the driver and was on his way to graduation. Master Sergeant Raul Perez Benavidez was a man of mixed Hispanic and indigenous heritage who grew up in the autonomous area along the U.S.-Mexico border. During the Vietnam War, he was injured with a gut wound and still able to assure that 8 other men who were wounded in his unit were able to get to safety to await evacuation to obtain medical assistance by carrying them off the field over his shoulder. He was told while receiving medical treatment that his injuries were too severe for him to return, but he did anyhow and ended up winning the Congressional Medal of Honor. It is not a mere coincidence that a Benavidez was invoked at the beginning of a fear campaign against young Texas drivers. There was purportedly an adult impact drivers program approved at the same time that the teen drivers program was approved. However, as of February of 2019, all new Texas drivers licensees over 25 were being referred to the Young Drivers Program in order to meet the requirements for issuance of a Texas driver's license. Following the less than 60-minute program, participants are issued a certificate with their student number, the date they completed the program, and the expiration date for them to use the certificate to obtain their license, which must be obtained within 90 days of the issuance of the certificate, or they are required to retake the test and obtain a new certificate. This means that since 2016, when the program was first engaged, young drivers and adult drivers have been pooled together for the purposes of required certification regarding issuance of a Texas driver's license. What happens with the certificate information, or the student number that one is issued in order to complete the requirements for the program, is not disclosed. But neither disclosed is what is done with the numbers designated as contract on each newly issued document for identification by the Texas Department of Public Safety. That it is the state of Texas that oversees this database raises serious concerns regarding issuance of temporary municipal identification documents, such as the ones often issued to homeless people in Houston, that reference data from these state databases while also branding them with other departments. In Houston, the Houston Police Department's Homeless Outreach Team, or HOT, issues identification documents that also designate the Mental Health Alliance, National Alliance for Mental Illness, Mental Health and Mental Retardation Act, MHA/NAMI/MHMRA, on the document itself, regardless of one's actual mental health or disability status. The document additionally features the name of a duty officer and a notary seal, a different process than the state, and also with different officials. Upon application for a Texas driver's license, one is asked if they have a disability that would interfere with their capacity to operate a motor vehicle or would require assistance. However, there was no distinction in regards to the municipal ID issued by Houston as to whether or not the individual whose state database information is accessed is disabled in accordance with comparable or different standards than those required by the state of Texas. According to the Texas Department of Public Safety, the program is a Texas version of the California Impact Teen Drivers Program. The California program website says it got its start when it incorporated in 2007 as a partnership between California Casualty, the California Association of Highway Patrolmen, and the California Teachers Association. The current board of directors is comprised mostly of people with backgrounds in education and law enforcement. There is no publicly accessible information at this time regarding a comparable board of directors for the Texas program. Whatever associations the Texas program has with the California program need closer evaluation. The legality of the application of Texas's current Impact Drivers program needs close scrutiny and decisive action. Public information on the timeline around the program's approval and rollout is difficult to obtain. It should be clear and concise, as should licensing procedures themselves. The state of Texas needs to explain how it can require by law a licensee to participate and complete a program that does not even at this time exist, but instead default into a program intended for young people who do not have the same needs, considerations, or obligations that older people have. If it is determined that the state of Texas intentionally developed, implemented, or delivered the Impact Drivers program in such a manner as to defraud young Texans due to outstanding debts for which it would not or could not pay at terms that it wanted, then that needs direct addressing immediately. The psychology behind the presentation of the video has the effect of downgrading a young driver immediately, as opposed to providing standards within which to be evaluated based on future consistent performance. Many surveys and reports have already proven that lack of confidence is a major factor in causing accidents. Shaming is not nearly as much a deterrent as honest and direct discourse. Now, when I originally wrote this, I added extra information about the relationship between the public pension system in California as an example of a potential peril that could come with having a program from one state that was based upon a program from another state, but with having a different kind of leadership paradigm associated with it. This was, again, in the beginning of 2019. Since then, it has become even more of a concern. As of a month ago, the last time I checked, the Texas Department of Public Safety still requires adults over the age of 25 to go to the Young Drivers Program in order to get the certificate they need to get their driver's license. That means it is over 5 years since the law passed. What ended up happening at the 5-year mark? Well, what ended up happening at the 5-year mark is that a member of Congress from the north of Texas ended up being appointed as the National Director of Intelligence. And I have contended and continue to contend that these certificates issued for driver's license have been used in some sort of security scheme by the state of Texas, and that it's actually part of an illicit economy, and that they are using those certificates for things that are not appropriate to be coding into the record of a first-time driver. Now, I say this as someone who believes that my first effort at getting a driver's license in the state of Virginia, when I was growing up aboard a military base, were intentionally disabused by people who used my effort to get my first driver's license in acts of securities fraud that have persisted to this day. It's even more concerning to think that there may have been other issues, especially in the last 5 years, where adults have refused to take responsibility for a lack of accountability when it comes to administration of public services, up to and including ones that have to do with transportation safety, as well as very important matters related to the futures of young adults. I do not know what states have a comparable program to this. But this is something that has persisted for the entire time I've been in Texas, and it has a direct material effect on my ability to access resources. And I'm 43. I already requested and have not heard back from my request that somebody investigate if there is an intentional effort at some act of malfeasance involving the appointment of the current National Director of Intelligence, who may be drawing on resources he had access to as a representative from the state of Texas for alleged national intelligence purposes. My concern is that what is happening is they're taking these certificates and they're setting up dark accounts on youth, and that we are supposed to be confidentialized, and they are trying to entrain a generation into believing that they are required to cede when it comes to their rights to due process and to upholding the Constitution and to their access to and rights to constitutional protections, as a way to indoctrinate them into accepting that they are responsible for paying for the debts of the older generation. That's not true. That's not true. If what else I've alleged is true, then this is a very significant and serious conspiracy, and it is absolutely inappropriate to try to penalize a younger generation that was intentionally set up for failure at a certain rate, so older people that had hoped to get away with their crimes can leverage it as insurance.